I'd like to welcome you to our session here today, Women Disrupting Web3. And whilst we're all going, you've got three lovely people here today, and we're all going to introduce ourselves when we talk a bit. But what we're going to do is just do a quick round who's in the room of our names. So I'm Alison Alexander. I'm the Director of Ethics and Social Policy at Metacampus.
My name is Rike Exner. I'm a software developer in Berlin at the company IAV, and I'm also part of the Women Build Web3 collective and working there, coding. That's
excellent.
Yes, and I'm Tako. I am a co-founder of Unique Labs and Smagener. It's a metaverse for fashion and lifestyle, for content creation and monetization. And we, as a women-led startup, harnessing, I would say, the power of diversity and creating the programs for including more diverse audience into the Web3, including people with different abilities and diversity of genders.
Perfect. Thank you. That's us. So, and you'll hear from each of us. And what we want to cover, and we hope by the end of the session, you think that we've covered a brief insight into Web3 and the importance of the transition into Web3. I'm going to pick up that stuff. Then Rika's going to cover the importance of transitioning into Web3 for engineer developers. And then Tako's going to end the session. We've taken us through the innovations made possible through Web3 and how you can use all forms of Metaverse for creatives, artists, and as a founder in the Metaverse. So we're likely to touch on all of those and a bit more. If you have questions, drop them in the chat and one of us might answer during the session, or we'll save them up and come back to those at the end of the session. So I'm going to kick us off. So the thing that I notice about Web3, and I say this as somebody who's older and was more into Web2, was that when Web2 was here, we had different images for our different social platforms. We were always told that. Got to have different images, your professional self, your fun self, your, I don't know, your kind of chilled self. Everybody had a different one. And actually people were worried about bringing them together. And what I notice in this Web3 world is that that's all disappearing. People are really comfortable having, some people have two images, their kind of avatar and their whole person in the actual, on their LinkedIn profile. And some just use the same one throughout everyone. And I think that that for me really shows that, especially I want to say Gen Z and those coming after, are much more comfortable with the coming together of their physical world and their virtual world. But this slide was not just up to show you us and our wonderful, lovely pictures. It was up to say, to share with you a thought that I have around edge walkers. And for anyone's wondering what an edge walker is, it's not walking on the cliffs of Dover. It is actually about people who are taking risks, who are looking at doing new things, investing of themselves, their own money, to find new solutions to problems that they've identified. It's about building bridges from one technology to another. And it's about breaking new ground, bringing something new into the world. I heard this concept on a Web3 session, and Susan Furness was talking about Judy Neal's work. So if you want to have a look, check out the book. Brilliant. It is such a lovely idea. And I literally am here to say that we are all risk takers and building bridges. And you're going to hear about that today from my colleagues. And actually, we're breaking new ground. And for me, the risk taking bit is why I joined Metacampus. So I joined Metacampus because I have a long history in working in public sectors and about bringing about change for children, young people, disadvantaged groups. And actually, because I'm comfortable with taking risks and using new innovation, actually I joined Pera and the team at Metacampus because they wanted to take and develop new technology and take risks. But what they wanted was somebody who would keep an eye on the ethical aspect of that. How do we do that so we're as inclusive as possible? How do we do that so we allow and give opportunities to those people that might not have had the same opportunities? So that for me is why I joined, and I'm so, to be honest, I'm such a fan of Web3 and the tools of Web3. So MetaCampus is we are here to help people transition from Web2 to Web3, but more businesses. How does a whole business take their whole workforce and induct them into it? How does a professional, not a tech or an engineer, how does an artist, how does somebody who's an accountant, who's a surveyor, how do they start to think about the new careers that are going to be in Web3 that we're also going to hear about? So I spend my days with the team looking at ethics and how we apply that, and also starting to have conversations across the globe. And we have those conversations on Twitter Spaces and in LinkedIn, and looking at actually, as we're taking risks, building new bridges and breaking new ground, you have to do a check and balance. Do the rules we have apply really well to that? Or do we now need to start looking at making new legislation that will help us address and protect people in this new evolving world? And I think the whole focus needs to be about how do we minimize the additional legislation and rules that we bring, but how do we make sure the ones that we've got can be adapted if they can? So for us, Web3 and its ecosystem. Now, I was new to Web3 in November, and I tell you, every word on here, I mean, I didn't even know these words or how they were being used, but I have learned so much about Web3 and about the whole ecosystem, what it is. And it's a tough journey to learn. What does this mean? What do wallets mean? Soft wallets, hard wallets? What does NFTs? What does blockchain? All of these things which we're going to talk about. What is the metaverse? And is there only one metaverse? I was convinced there was one metaverse. Now I understand there are many, many metaverses. So, but it really is a really complicated place. And anyone who says no probably grew up in it. So they started in Roblox, or they've just been working with it all their time. But for anyone like me who's like new to it, we really do need to help people move into it. And so what is it that they are moving into? It is, and because people often say, well, what's the difference? Web3, Web2, Web1. And so for me, it's like Web1 is where like we used to input data. Web2 is where everyone says lots of expressions I hear is when AOL came about and everyone heard you plugged it into your telephone and wire and you heard the ringing of do you have mail? And that's often like what a lot of people do. But it was more interaction. It was a social. It's where we really came into that place of feeling comfortable being social. But Web3 is really about changing that and doing it differently and giving ourselves like more opportunities to actually interact, to own, to become much more decentralized. And that is what the whole world of Web3 is about. And you're going to hear a lot of those opportunities as we talk further. So why should we do Web3 and why should we transition? And I think it is a good question, and it's an important one to answer. For me, the importance of it is because it's here. And some people say, yeah, but it's here, but it will be ages. Well, actually, Web 1 took a long time to get everyone to use. Web 2 took shorter time, and Web 3 is absolutely changing, and people are getting more comfortable and moving into Web 3 much more quickly than they did anything else. So why? Because it's here. 2, because it's going to be the employment of the future. We know that everyone is going to be able to work in jobs that will be operating in the Web3 ecosystem. So for me, and also, I mean, most importantly is our children are using it, they are comfortable with it, and actually the future generations are going to live more and more of their virtual life and their physical life. They're going to see them integrated and working together. So for me, I really do feel that it's so important that we induct those people who have not been in Web3 into Web3 using a variety of different tools so that then they can actually comfortably move into employment in Web3 and actually take advantage of all that it offers. So the thing that I am also around Web3 that really, for me, I love is the blockchain. The blockchain is something that I think can solve so many complicated issues and questions that we often have as a society. And I think it can help us have our identity in Web3. But I'm going to leave that for Rike to talk to you about or mention the blockchain. So over to you.
Thank you. You can switch the slide, please. Thank you. So, as we heard from Alison, Web3 is moving forward at a breathtaking pace and creating a lot of new opportunities. And for me, as a software developer, Web3 is like a vast space of new, exciting technologies. And I dived into it since I began to read about it in my Twitter tech bubble just last year. And since then, I've been exploring the space and kind of love the spirit in it, really. So the Web3 blockchain development space can still be seen as a fairly new one. So you definitely don't have to worry about missing out or being late or something like this. And if you start now, having a look into it or making a shift, you'll definitely still be early. So we have already discussed some of the most exciting parts of the space and ideas around NFTs, but there's also DeFi, decentralized finance, DAOs, decentralized organization, and behind all those concepts and real-world applications, there's, of course, always the hidden work of software developers that do all the coding of the so-called smart contracts and decentralized applications, the foundations of Web3. So what I brought here today, as a software engineer working in Web2, but very excited about Web3, is a small roadmap on what to learn and how to start doing hands-on Web3 development. That means building decentralized applications on top of a blockchain, including smart contracts. And what is great is that you can have a look into it regardless of what your former experience as a software developer was, whether you were a Java, C#, Python, JavaScript, front-end, back-end, mobile, whatever developer expert you were. Web3 technologies are not something that is completely new or will replace Web2 technologies, but rather work as an extension to existing tech stacks. So step one. You're one step too late. Alison, one step back, please. Demystify the base concepts. This is the point where I'd recommend to start reading, consuming some videos about blockchains as the foundations, cryptocurrencies, decentralization, other characteristics of Web3, maybe listening to some talks like this one, and you will find out about all those buzzwords in the space. And yes, there are a lot to handle, I have to admit, and we saw Alison's word cloud, but this is really the first step. And maybe you heard of Ethereum before. It's one of the most popular blockchains, especially among developers. And it's quite crucial to understand how it differs from, for example, Bitcoin blockchain in terms of programmability, and why coding and deploying smart contracts on top of its virtual machine really revolutionized blockchain development in the last years. So step two. Oh, Alison, you stopped sharing. Thank you. Do things in the Web3 before you start coding. I'd suggest this. So set up a web wallet, like MetaMask, for example. It's the most popular one. Connect your wallet to existing decentralized applications, for example, OpenSea, the NFT marketplace, or maybe buy some Ether or Solana or Avalanche, whatever crypto coin you like. Maybe join Decentraland or whatever. What I can recommend as well a lot is doing stuff on the so-called test nets that accompany the main blockchains that work exactly like the real blockchains, but all your transactions are made with fake or worthless Ether coins to play and test around. So you can even purchase an NFT on the testnet OpenSea to get a feeling how Web3 works, and you can do all that without spending a single dollar. So this is really helpful for me, at least. Step 3. As developers, the best way to learn is actually build projects. So I'd recommend starting with Ethereum developments, since the ecosystem is really fantastic and you will find a ton of resources for it. The community is quite big and very nice. There are constantly hackathons, workshops, community gatherings, where you can learn and participate for free. So what you will then probably first stumble upon is creating smart contracts with the language Solidity, which looks a little bit like JavaScript. And in combination with the web front end that you can build to interact with your smart contract backend, you can ship your first decentralized application. And there are some really great frameworks and tools that can help you during that journey that you shouldn't miss. And I put some of them on the next slide, just to give you a little glimpse of the ecosystem that awaits you. This is the Ethereum developer tooling landscape. Maybe check it out. Maybe you find some tools you already know, like VS Code, which is a very popular IDE for software developers. You can also use in the Web3, no problem. And we have tools that handle your wallet and addresses and accounts, like MetaMask, that serve as the gateway to Web3 applications. And there are other really great frameworks and tools for client coding, storage, infrastructure, and so on. The ecosystem is really wild right now. There are so many new protocols, tech solutions, and so on, I'd say, on a weekly basis. Okay, let's proceed to step 4, my favorite step, because community is key. This is true in every field. And I think it's especially true in Web3. And personally, I never experienced a community so supportive, open-minded, and vibing as the Web3 developers community. So give it a try, find a Twitter peer group or a Discord server you like, or even a DAO to contribute to, where you can build and learn together. And there are already some really great communities also for only female or non-binary folks, that help their members to break into that field, to begin coding. They're giving out hackathons, scholarships, and many more things. It's really cool. Maybe you can also check out the blog post I linked in that slide that includes a lot of communities that are very active in this field right now. Yeah, I want to recommend 2 communities that helped me a lot to feel comfortable and welcomed in this space. And the first is Developer DAO, and the second is Women Build Web3. And some words about the latter. It's a collective of women and non-binary folks that build apps in the Web3. And we are about to start a 30 days long curriculum, like a mini hackathon, where you will learn to build and ship decentralized apps, very beginner friendly, supportive, including incentives, and accompanied by some really awesome partners of the space. And you could check it out. And you're very invited if you became curious to have a look into our collective. Yeah, if you want to read more about developer stuff at Web3, you can also check out my webpage, of course. There's a broad Web3 chapter on it. Yeah, this was for the tech people among you guys. And Tako will now share her thoughts about Web3 from another point of view.
Thank you, Rike. I think I will be giving maybe a different perspective on what you were talking about and why you have to learn coding smart contracts. I will dive into how actually smart contracts can be used on an example of the Metaverse and NFTs, and shortly about what NFTs are. It's a non-fungible tokens that represent unique digital assets stored on one of the blockchains. There is only one copy of that asset on the entire blockchain. And when you mint or buy an NFT, you are becoming an owner of that asset. And the proof of your ownership is stored on the blockchain and is publicly accessible. So what is a metaverse? Well, Alison was saying, there is a lot of different versions how people describe the metaverse. But there is like a common idea that the metaverse is some kind of a shared virtual environment that we can join and experience simultaneously. There is a notion that, again, like there is a one only metaverse, just like a second iteration of the internet, but there are multiple platforms that can create virtual worlds for specific purposes on the internet. You can think about different websites, about web platforms, about mobile platforms as an analogy how metaverse in different platforms can be working. And the different purposes that it can actually have is maybe a gaming. It might be a social networking platform. It might be a digital commerce like stores in the metaverse, or educational or recreational centers, or a mix of them. And the possibilities are limitless. The difference between the metaverse and the virtual worlds and chats and platforms that already exist and existed before is that the metaverse functions on the blockchain. And it means that everything that is presented, any object or asset in the metaverse can be an NFT, which you can control with smart contracts. An exchange of these assets, control like how the ownership goes from one person to another. Everything can be controlled by the functions indicated in smart contracts. Of course, there are like multiple channels how metaverse is actually controlled, but for now we're talking about the blockchain side and not about the content creation side. As I said, everything can be NFT. And in the beginning, I said that NFT, when you buy it and mint it, you become the owner of it. And another maybe the answer of why Web3 and blockchain and metaverse is worth of getting into is because the ownership of assets changed the whole game of the things that we are creating digitally. When you own the NFT or any asset in the metaverse, I'll give you the example on even our platform for fashion and lifestyle metaverse. Let's say you bought the space, the room, as NFT. Whatever you create in this space, whatever the other NFTs you mint there, you own them. And the difference between the things that existed before, let's say other gamings, is that if you play the game online and you buy in-game assets, you actually do not own this. The ownership of these assets are still in the hands of game developers. And if they block you, or if they end their work and the company is closed, you lose all your assets as soon as the game is closed. But when you own your assets as NFTs, you will never lose your ownership status. So how it can be used, let's say you are creating your own platform. The ownership gives the power for the developers to control who can access the experiences on the platform. So your smart contract can have the function that identifies specific NFTs or digital items in crypto wallets of potential users. As soon as they come to your website, to a platform, then connect their wallet, and your smart contract reads what are the assets in their wallet, and it finds and identifies specific items that meet the requirements from the access side. The user will get can get the specific access to different other experiences, or get specific rewards, or open a special room, or whatever. Actually, the creativity is kind of endless. You can create whatever you want. Another example can be how you can utilize in the metaverse their NFTs is actually in smart contracts is actually if somebody creates, let's say there's two users that are creating a world together, and two of these people, they have their own crypto wallets that are their identifier IDs, and your smart contract, for instance, reads them, and they create together an NFT. You can put the logic that when the NFT is sold, it automatically splits the income. This is kind of like a two example how NFTs can be used if the smart contract is written with a functionality that let people to utilize their NFTs. The possibility, of course, are endless, and it all depends on what's already been written by others or what can be explored in the future. Okay, next slide. Yes, so I will talk a bit more about the opportunities in terms of like jobs in the metaverse. As Alison said, that it's the future, so it means that everything that in the future will be developed and will be linked to the Web3, it will bring more employment opportunities. And I would say that for now, what we're talking about from today's perspective, there is already three professions that are most sought in the space. The first one is, of course, blockchain developers, because everything we create, everything that we work with is controlled by smart contracts. So people who have these skills are very, very highly valued in the space. Second one is community management and building. Third one is actually 3D designers and creators. I would also add that the possibilities in the space that do not end on the things that you see on the slide, because as the space progresses and as we go forward, there will be rising new roles that didn't exist right now because of the needs of the community as soon as we develop the platforms and as soon as the infrastructure proceeds. So like we had, we didn't have like social media managers before, but as soon as Instagram, TikTok, and other platforms fully developed, there was like new different types of professions that arise. So same things comes to the Web3. In generalizing, I would say, if you think about how you can join the NFT, I would suggest you to look at your previous background and identify what kind of skills did you have before, and think about, let's say, like what you see on the slide, and see which direction you would like to continue growing, and then try to actually making active steps toward this. And the next slide will actually identify some ways how you can start joining it. Web3 space in general is very, very active, especially from the side of startups, young projects that are actively scaling and building new environments, whether it's a metaverse or something else. One of the best way how you can quickly join and start learning and scaling your opportunities in the space is actually looking for Web3 startups and asking them actively about, are there any roles open for you to join, either as an intern or maybe full-time employee. There's also a lot of projects, NFT collections, and collectives that provide a lot of opportunities from learning experience, and some of them Rike already covered in terms of you can join their Discords, you can join their other platforms where they communicate with the communities and actively ask like what kind of roles are open for now. I would highly suggest to join the Discords and the list that Rike shared, because I would say, like, if you want to join and if you want to learn, it's kind of like a best way. It's the most active platforms who actively providing the information and actively looking for people to onboard them into the NFTs, because we do all understand that to make this Web3 scale, we need more people in the space. And also in your company, if you have a blockchain and metaverse departments, well, of course you can join. And if you don't, then you have an opportunity to actually onboard your company and be the person who's going to pivot and be the person who's going to actually educate your department and your employees and become the leader in this sector for your company, to join the blockchain and be in the list of first companies who actually adopted Web3. This is all for me. Thank you all for listening. And there is like a information how you can connect to us. And of course, if you have any further questions, feel free to ask, and we will try to go deeper into each of the questions.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. So, questions. I can't see any, but I can't seem to see the comments box. So, are there any questions?
So we did share multiple resources and links to interesting websites, and you can find them in the PDF we shared, so you can have a further look into it. This was asked multiple times, so I mentioned it again.
Brilliant. And have we put the PDF in a location where everybody could get?
Yeah, sure. Yes, we did.
Yep.
We have a question from Mark. How long can a beginner be trained to be a professional Web3 developer? I think it's kind of like a question to you, Rike, but I will give my tip as a non-tech person who also learned smart contracts. Of course, it all depends on the personal possibilities, like, how fast they learn and stuff. But I would say it can take about a month to go from zero to kind of starting understanding how to write a smart contract and how to read it. Maybe you won't be able to do, some advanced features, but at least you will be able to read the smart contract and kind of learn. And maybe I would also try to find one of the sources that I used. Rike, now you can answer more professionally.
It depends on your previous knowledge. If you are already a professional, like Web2 developer in any kind of field, maybe you're a C# professional developer, I think you won't have some problems to dive into that space and learn new Web3 technologies and frameworks, because you're already in that developer's mindset. And maybe you will have to do some projects, do some hacking, do some coding for around 1 or 2 months, and you will, I think, have the most important experience, most important knowledge you will need. And Tako, yeah, you dropped the link to Crypto Zombies, which is a very famous starting tutorial for Solidity developers. So Solidity is probably a very good start to get a feeling for smart contract development. But I have to say, my feeling is also that in Web3, there's a lack of front-end developers. So we also need persons that do know front-end development, so mostly JavaScript and TypeScript, that are able to create the functionality to connect to smart contracts and provide the user experience in the front end. So if that's your space, you are very welcome in Web3 development area.
Agreed. Yeah, there's an actual understanding of what kind of role you want to take in the space, and then kind of identifying how you're going to.
There's also a very great need for developer relationship manager, because we have so many new frameworks, protocols, and tools in this in the field, and all those mostly have a person that does some community management for those protocols and tools, and does events or manages like the network around this tool. And this is mostly called developer relationship management. So if this is something you're interested in, have a look into it.
Yes, I see another question asking from Larkin. What do you all see in the major problems, downsides of Web2 that Web3 solves? I kind of have my answer from my side, but maybe you have yours first.
No, go for it. You kick off with an answer, and then we can build on that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, as again, because I'm a founder of a platform, Metaverse, about co-creation and content creation, is actually that's one of the problems that we see in the Web2 world. Like, let's say social platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and others. You do create your content, and again, you're under the control of the platform because the platforms are centralized. So the way you earn your income from your content is also kind of dependent on these platforms. And when it comes to Web3, the ownership, because it's owned by you, you actually own the data that you monetize. So I would say that one of the problems that Web3 solves is actually the monetization of the content that they create, whether it's just for fun, and you post, I don't know, like in the social media photos of your puppies, or if you're professionally hosting your social account. And the more a platform is decentralized, whether it's Web2 or Web3, the more power you have as an owner. From my side, again, I do see that when the platform is maybe still curated, and created in a way that supports creators in terms of like promoting their work and just encouraging them to promote their work and not creating any barriers, is one of the powers of the Web3 compared to Web2.
And if I can add, somebody's obviously agreed with you, decentralization, and I would want to pick up that one too, to say that to me feels really important. But to throw in another one, I'd also want to say that through the blockchain that we've heard about from both of you, I think that there's that real ability to have that sovereign identity held within the blockchain. So that if you are somebody, like we no longer, in a sense, you could get rid of passports, you could get rid of birth certificates. There's really so many unique things that we can use the blockchain for. And I think especially if you think of instances where people like have to leave their country and therefore the country economy collapses, actually, if they are both using the blockchain to store their identity and their personal possessions of who they are, then when they leave their country, they already are taking that with them. And then if they're also using it with the crypto, then I think that also gives them another opportunity that they can therefore take that with them rather than arriving in a destination without that resource that they previously had and that identity. So for me, I see those as important. But Rike, before we get cut off at 2:30, I wonder if you want to add one as well.
I was just
She's been busy.
I was looking up some female non-binary communities in the space to answer Patricia's question. But another question from Patricia about people.
Yes.
And they're forgetting.
I think that is a big one that people are now starting to raise. If I want to be forgotten, actually, can I be if it's therefore stored on the blockchain? And that becomes one of those ethical questions as well, doesn't it? Is it right to be? Do I have a right to be present and then be forgotten? And if I do, actually, what happens to those other people that were connected with me if I've been forgotten? So I think, that is a whole great topic in itself to talk about. But I think we're going to be closed. Go for it, Tako.
Yes, I wanted to answer Patricia's question. I know a couple of communities. I just tried to find the link and internet is not working, but it's Christina Flynn and Meg, like a two person who really promotes the women and non-binary communities in the space. So if you connect to me in LinkedIn or Twitter, I will try to share with you like for the links. Unfortunately, quickly I can do this like from tech point of view. And also I think, you know, how Web2 and Web3 kind of changed more perspectives than, okay, Patricia, is actually, you know, even thinking beyond the content creation and our self-expression and ownership, it's also thinking about how organizations can skip the mediatory in terms of like banks. When you, for instance, NGO and you raise funds, you can actually raise these funds like directly from potential people who are going to, you know, donate, creating the whole DAO that raise specific money for specific reasons. You kind of skip this middleman part when you don't need to pay extra fees and extra percents to like third parties just because the things are built in Web3 world. So you kind of have to work with them. With the DAOs, you can do it directly, or if you're a startup, you actually can raise VC funds directly from either DAOs or your potential future community. So there is a lot of different ways how Web3 is different from Web2. Unfortunately, we don't have time enough to discuss all of these aspects, but we can continue these conversations if you connect with us in social medias.
Did you want to add anything, Rike?
No, just thank you to you guys for listening, and let's connect wherever you want.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
It's been really great.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Hope to connect with you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.